Hey everyone, this is Bill D'Alessandro, and welcome back to another episode of Acquisitions Anonymous. I don't know what day you are listening to this one, but we recorded it on a Friday, so Michael and I had some fun. We review a medical marijuana grow facility in the great state of Oklahoma. This episode, while the deal was good, it prompted a bunch of really fun stories, especially from Michael, about the marijuana industry, about the farming industry, a discussion of, is this a farm or is this more like an alcohol distillery? So this was a really cool episode. We had a lot of fun recording it. I hope you have a lot of fun listening to it.
Today's sponsor is Acquira, your acquisition in a box service. Acquira exists to help you find, evaluate, and close on a small business, all in under a year. Their team has bought and operated over 30 businesses across 3 different portfolios, so they practice what they preach. With Acquira, you can choose to go through their accelerator, set up your investment thesis, and finance creative business by yourself, or Acquira can do it for you. Their search team scours the continental U.S. for a business matching your thesis and gets it under LOI. Their unique business model combines an accelerator and an investment fund. They can take on minority interest in the business, making them something like a search fund. Only you maintain majority control. Once you've signed an LOI, their M&A advisors provide individualized support through the entire diligence and closing process. They'll provide guidance toward your offer structure, in-depth financial and operational due diligence, and securing funding for your deal. They will fly out to the business with you. And once you acquire a business, they can help you grow it as well. Acquira's ACE framework will help you transition that business from owner-operated to management-led, increasing profits and allowing you to step away from the daily operations and enjoy doing more of what you love. And if more of what you love is buying and growing more businesses, they can help you build a portfolio of businesses and eventually get liquidity from that portfolio by selling it to a financial buyer or selling it to its employees. Space is limited each month, so if you're looking to acquire a cash-flowing business this year, sign up now at acquira.com/pod-lander. And again, that's acquira.com/pod-lander. Bill, I have some good news. I'm less punch drunk than yesterday when I was
a little bit. You got some sleep?
Less sleep deprived. So maybe this episode will only be like 40% shaggy dog stories about what happened with my family and the country clubs and stuff.
Man shakes fist at sky complaining about golf.
All right. So since it's Friday, I thought we would do something fun, more fun than usual. And it is a medical marijuana business for sale.
Let's do it.
And when you think about medical marijuana, which state comes to mind? Which one do you think about first?
In Colorado when they legalized medical marijuana, which is a whole separate story. So that is the state I think of.
Oh, this is probably the second state that comes to mind. Oklahoma. They have not legalized anything in Texas. It is pathetic.
Which is weird because Texas is usually like no rules. Let's go.
That's what you think, but
that's the brand.
It turns out the rules are just very selective. So
we have no rules except a few that really matter. There's a few things we really care about, a few categories of things.
What happens in bathrooms, how people dress, and then but like we have no casino gambling here. Like it's just so lame.
Yeah, that was one of the weirdest things about Texas when I learned, you said that they care so much about how people dress. When I learned that you were required to wear a hat and boots whenever you cross the state line, that really blew my mind about Texas.
Actually, a lot of my friends are freaking out because there's this, the bill right now, there's a bill in the legislature that prohibits, basically it prohibits men from dressing as women in public. And then the way it's set up and what they've started to do is instead of the government enforcing anything, they make it so they legalize the ability for one person to sue somebody else
for the way they dress.
But
this won't go bad at all. I'm sure
it's really bad. So for example, the way it's written is really broad. It applies to theaters. So like if a publicly funded theater has a man dressed as a woman, and children are allowed in the vicinity, it's a problem. And that's the other thing. Like kids can't. It's for kids. It's considered indecent for a man to wear women's clothes.
This is just very fraught. This is very
When I was
how do you legislate this? I mean,
so you can't have like a Prince impersonator anymore because the shirts versus the blouses.
Oh boy. Well, a lot of cowboy outfits are kind of fringy. You got to be careful.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, we definitely just got canceled by one half of the U.S. population. I am not certain which half we got canceled
Yeah,
by.
that's my favorite way, is just to piss everybody off. That's how I like to be. I like to be like so in the middle that both people hate you.
Look, I mean, the Texas legislature, I know you're worried about what happens with how people are dressing. Can we have a casino while you're working on it? Like, just open up a casino in each city in Texas, and let's call it a day so I could go play blackjack every once in a while because I feel like it. Anyway.
All right. Medical marijuana in Oklahoma.
Yeah. You want to read this one or you want me to do it?
I can read it. So this is a medical marijuana grow facility, absentee/passive ownership in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. They want $3 million for this business, and it has $1.6 million of cash flow. So they want less than 2x cash flow for this. This is another business, second episode in a row we've recorded where the cash flow is higher than the EBITDA, which is interesting, implies negative capex or something. So EBITDA is 1.45 and cash flow is 1.58. So we'll use the cash flow number. So like 1.6. They want $3 million for it, is 2x. They say they got $1 million of FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and about $500,000 of real estate, which is not included in the asking price. And then here's the thing that really surprised me: established in 2021. So as we record this is 2023. Like, how many cycles of marijuana growing can you actually have done in like a couple years? Like, this is very early. So this is a great opportunity for an investor that wants to be an absentee owner, or at least have the option of working on the business rather than being stuck working in the business. Oh man, we're starting right out with the cliches.
Let's go.
This is a 9,900 square foot medical marijuana grow operation located in Oklahoma City. This business has multiple owners, but the main operational owner is willing to stay on with the business long-term for the new owner if they wish. So the new owner could be almost 100% passive. This facility was built out in 2021 and planted their first crop in mid-February 2022. So as of right now, they have been growing things for 18 months. For the first 12 months, the revenue was $1.4 million with a net profit of $950,000. The numbers above in the listing are what the owner projects, of course, for 2023. So we're selling marijuana grow houses based on forward EBITDA now.
Oh.
All right. During the first 12 months, they were mainly focused on getting everything dialed in, and they were only able to do 3 harvests in 12 months. Going forward, they will be able to do 4 harvests, so once a quarter, which will allow them to produce between 1,800 and 2,000 pounds of cannabis per year. Currently, they are able to sell the product for $1,200 a pound on average. However, they mostly sell through brokers, who I would assume take a cut. If the new owner was to hire a salesman and sell direct to the dispensaries, they could get closer to $1,800 a pound, which would increase the gross revenue to $3.2 to $3.6 million per year. This is a great business in a very recession-proof industry. I'll give you that, I guess. It's a vice business. Call Mitch here's his number, Mitchell Yinger. They got 6 employees. The real estate is leased. Okay, so this is interesting. Normally when they go, oh, real estate, could be included but not part of the deal, it's because the seller owns the real estate. In this case, the real estate is leased, but apparently the landlord would be open to selling. Their competition, there's plenty of other grow operations, but most cannot produce the same quality of product. The 2 easiest ways to expand would be add on to the existing building and allow for more room to grow, and hire a salesman to sell direct to dispensaries, which would take your per pound price from $1,200 to $1,800. It also says seller is open to financing 25 to 50% of the sale price. Interesting. One owner is willing to stay on long term. The other owner will stay for 30 to 90 days. So, Michael, what do you think?
Man, I should be selling pot. No, but seriously, do we know what the rules are in Oklahoma?
I have no idea.
Because that's the other thing that's interesting about marijuana is the rules are like the liquor laws. They differ based on state. So like here in Texas, like liquor, for example, has what's called a 3-tier system. Have we ever talked about this?
Yep. Yeah, we have 3-tier in North Carolina too.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, here's how a 3-tier system works. 3-tier system for liquor distributorship basically means there's producers who like brew beer or brew liquor or whatever. So like, let's say you're Jack Daniels or AB InBev or whatever, right? And so that's the producer. Then there is the middlemen who are distributors. And then there are retailers and end user customers. And the way the 3-tier system works is the producers have to go through distributors, and distributors then are the ones that put the product out into the market. And at least here in Texas, there is a reason why the liquor distributors, their kids went to Harvard and they fly around in private jets. And the people who own the end user, the 3rd tier, who own liquor stores or who own restaurants, their kids hopefully go to state college. It's because there's a limitation of supply of these distributors to where there's a handful of license and they've been grandfathered in forever.
They're monopolies.
So they're monopolies.
They're licensed monopolies.
If you want Budweiser, you go through this one distributor and they get to charge whatever they want. And their only price competition is what Coors or some other product is selling for. And then, I mean, I think most of us who follow the way consumer products work is there has been massive consolidation on the producer side. So like typically what happens is you have a brand that's the AB InBev and they own 500 different brands and they work with one distributor who then has a ton of pricing power and is the 3-tier system. So that I bring that out. And did I explain that okay, Bill? Or did it?
Yeah, well, the key is that 3-tier system and never the 3 shall mix, right? It is illegal for brands to do their own distribution. It is illegal for retailers to manufacture. So in states with 3-tier system, like in liquor, like we have here in North Carolina, it's very hard for like same entities to do retail and also to make their own alcohol.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Like the manufacturers are not legally allowed to disintermediate the distributor. So it's all locked in.
It reminds me of the, I don't know if you saw this story, but it reminds me of the original marijuana legalization bill that happened in Ohio. Did you ever hear this story?
No, not in Ohio. No.
So there were these guys who basically spent a bunch of money to try to legalize recreational marijuana. And the bill almost passed. Like it was super close. And I think it was in Ohio. It might have been one of the other states, but this happened like 5 or 6 years ago. And basically when they paid a bunch for lobbyists, they went to go try to get marijuana legalized in their state. And basically when they wrote up the bill, they basically created it such that the only place in the state that could produce marijuana and grow it legally was a farm that they controlled. Like it was the coolest hustle I've ever seen in my whole life. Like it was as good as what the military industrial complex, like the military contractors do to make sure that the money keeps flowing to Boeing and all these different folks, right? Like it was that times 10. It was just like the best grift of like regulatory capture I've ever seen in my whole life. And I think eventually people caught on to it and like it got killed. But it was so close. Like these guys basically passed a bill that was just like a blank checkbook for themselves. So anyway, that just reminds me.
They almost passed a bill.
It almost passed. It got really close. But like they were artificially creating a monopoly for themselves as the only place that could make marijuana in an entire state. Like it was just like, oh, you guys are so good.
I love it.
So anyway, the point being, like, just like every state is different. By the way, I also have a hilarious Portland story about every state being different that I could share, but I'm trying not to.
Portland is very different. I won't disagree.
Well, the funny thing, I don't know if you know about this, is Portland, but there is a state ruling that happened in Oregon, in the Oregon Supreme Court about free speech. Are you familiar with this? Have you heard of this?
No.
Okay. So if you go to Portland, they have had a state Supreme Court ruling from like 30 years ago. And the Supreme Court there basically ruled that nudity is protected under the First Amendment.
As speech.
As free speech. So okay. you go into these places and like, if you're naked, that's free speech. But it applies to like the gentlemen's establishments where people are walking around, or women are walking around naked, are like
speaking, right?
Everywhere. Like
speech.
That's free speech. Like, oh, would you like a shot of tequila from a naked waitress? Like that's the whole thing. And you go to these places and it's not like, well, at least here in Texas, like in San Antonio, you have to wear, pasties and all this kind of stuff. Like in Portland, they're just like YOLO. And it's called from this one Supreme Court like ruling. Anyway, it's just crazy.
That's still true today in Portland? You can just walk down the street naked and not be arrested for indecent exposure?
Bill, I read about this I read about this in The Economist. I don't know for certain, so I haven't experienced it.
This is not something you do on the regular, go to Portland.
Other people do this. But no, also like the appeal. I don't know. It's just like what's there's no upside.
There's a bunch of Portland body hair jokes also that I'm not going to make.
Oh boy. Yeah, we can get there. So anyway, different states with marijuana have different rules. And one of my buddies actually bought a grow operation in New Mexico. And the rules there were very interesting, where you had to have a grow operation, and then that enabled you to have one retail location, and they were like tied together.
Yep.
So basically what they had done, which was pretty cool, was fix the number of outlets and then fix the number of growers. So you were ensured that there was a limitation of supply. Which is something like you want as a,
if you're a supplier, that's something you want, not something you want as a consumer.
It was definitely whatever the opposite of consumer surplus is. It's a negative.
Supplier surplus.
Supplier surplus. So that would be the first thing I'd want to dig into on this Oklahoma thing is like, what is the regulatory environment we're working in? The way they hint about it is it's a very open market free for all. Which I think
they seem to think that they can sell straight to the retail outlets. And they don't, I noticed they call it a broker who they're currently going through, not a distributor, which to me, a difference would be like a broker arranges a deal and you still ship it. Like a distributor would take possession of your inventory. They're referring to it as a broker. So if they're using precise language, I would think a broker is basically like an outsourced salesperson that is visiting all the dispensaries, all the retailers, and arranging the orders and noticing they're out of stock and all that stuff.
100%. So that smells to me, that's like something I'd want to put a pin in, like understand, okay, first of all, if I'm going to get into this, what is the regulatory environment? And like, am I getting set up something akin to like the Ohio situation I talked about, where like I own the only farm in Oklahoma? By the way, if this was the only marijuana grow operation in Oklahoma, let's sell everything and run over there.
It would not be priced at 2 times cash flow if it were. The thing that's interesting to me about how this is priced is, so it's priced at 2 times cash flow, which I could see that in a vice industry like this one, right? With perhaps a relatively unstable regulatory environment. Not to say that there's a bill right now in Oklahoma State House about how to regulate marijuana, but there could be tomorrow. Like, this is an inherently unstable regulatory niche. So I could see a discount there. I could see kind of the sin discount on this business. But the thing that's weird to me is they want 2x EBITDA. And I happen to know from my time in Colorado and having some commercial real estate buddies that the build out on these grow houses is not cheap.
Yeah.
Because they need a ton of power. So I had a friend who was a commercial real estate broker, dime a dozen commercial real estate broker in Colorado, right around the time medical marijuana was legalized, or recreational marijuana was legalized rather. And so the grow operations just exploded. And he quickly figured out, he went from dime a dozen commercial real estate broker and then immediately hung a shingle as the grow house guy. Like, if you wanted to build a grow house, he would not only help you find the real estate, he knew how to get in contact with the local energy utility, negotiate the contract, because they got to come in and like pull additional power to these places for all the lights and the climate control and everything. So you need a ton of power in these grow houses. So he would help you negotiate with utility, get special rates. There's a ton of CapEx usually. There's actually a fair bit of build out. So you end up with, at this point, like they say they got $1 million of FF&E. I would think like that's probably their capitalized build out, if I had to guess, all the lights and all that stuff. And it's also interesting too that the real estate is leased, but the owner would be willing to sell. So that also makes me wonder how customized is this property. If the owner maybe just wants to let it go, maybe it makes more sense to own the real estate. But at the same time, then you can't really, how valuable is the real estate if the business is not in it? So is the real estate a great investment? I'm not sure. But either way, they probably put $1 million at least into this thing, and they're selling for 2 times cash flow. Like, this just seems absurdly, like, are they just trying to get their CapEx back? Like, why is it priced this way? Why go through all this pain in the ass to stand the thing up, to do all the CapEx, to build it, to get the permits, to like do all this shit that you got to do to start any startup business, let alone like a high CapEx regulatory one. And then 18 months in, you sell it for 2 times cash flow. Why? Like, what is going? I don't know what's going on.
Because it's a farm. It's a, you know, at least when you own a farm, like let's say you own some land in Iowa or Nebraska, and my buddy owns some, which is really interesting. You at least you have some sort of cornered resource, right? Which is what I like about him owning this land that he inherited, right? And so he's a gentleman farmer, and his neighbors run the crops on it, and he just does strategy for this land he owns. But at least there's a cornered resource, right? There's only so much hyper arable farmland, and at least you own that 500 acres, and you're going to be running your corn or soy or whatever you're going to put on it. Like, this is kind of the worst of both worlds, right? Which is you just built a grow house. And in this case, I looked it up. They're in Oklahoma County, which is Oklahoma City proper. So at least you're in a city. So that's nice. But like, if you go do what you're talking about, Bill, and drive outside of the airport of Denver, it's like grow house, grow house, grow house, grow house, warehouse, grow house, grow house. Like, there is no limitation on supply of people who can come in and try to undercut you on price. And you have all of the vagaries and downside of being a farmer. And to me, none of the even protective stuff, right? Like, you don't have, a limitation of supply. Like,
You don't have a bunch of corn subsidies.
yeah, exactly that. Like, let's not forget sugar subsidies, corn subsidies, like ethanol subsidies. Like, those are all things that go straight from the consumer to the farmers, which is potentially why America continues to export. Did you know that America exports like triple the amount of food of number 2 country?
I did know that. A wise man sent me a draft of a Twitter thread.
Oh yeah, that's my thread. Yeah. I need to run that. By the way, I wrote that thread last week, and I've been sitting on it because I want to send it on Saturday because it's a good Saturday thread. By the way, the thesis of the thread is, here is why America is overpowered, and from a video, if to use a video game phrase, and like, you would be stupid to try to live in any other country. It's a great thesis, by the way. We'll get people super mad on Twitter.
People get really pumped.
But it all comes down to geography. Like, America has, like, if this was a game of civilization and you started in North America, specifically owning the United States, like, it would be impossible to lose a game of civilization building cities here. And, so like, because of what we have in terms of that geography creating market advantage, like we're like triple what Germany produces, and Germany is the number 2 exporter of food. I didn't know that either. Like, I didn't know Germany was number 2, but we're like, we blow everybody else away. But some of it is because we subsidize it. Anyway, where did I take us there? So anyway,
it's a farm, but not a good one, is what you were going with.
Back to this deal. It's like a shitty farm. Like, this is what you're buying here, with high capex, and no subsidies.
Is it though? Because what makes a lot of farms shitty is the fact that they grow food and the margins on food are terrible.
Right.
They're so bad, in fact, that they need subsidies to stay in business. I would think, like, I don't know what corn goes for a pound, but it ain't $1,800. Okay. A pound. I mean, corn is probably like $1 a pound at wholesale. Like, your farmer is selling his corn for like a couple bucks a pound max, right? This farmer, quote unquote, is selling his quote unquote corn for $1,800 a pound. So it may be shitty in some ways, but it ain't bad in some other ways.
Corn, I just looked it up. The price of corn in 2023 is 54 cents a pound.
There you go. Okay.
How do people make money running a farm?
You don't. It has to be subsidized. You can't. Right?
Yeah. So I think that's a question. Where do you think this market's going? Like, is that what these guys see? Like, is that where they're going to end up? Like, this is going from 1,800 to 2,000 pounds.
I mean, if that's happening to this industry, the whole, like, everybody should be running. All capital should be out of this industry as quick as it can possibly run, right? That will decimate the entire value chain. But I don't think that's going to happen. Here's why. Absent a small portion of the population, you need to eat corn 3 times a day. You don't need to consume this product 3 times a day necessarily, right? So like this is, and also like corn is like food is just a bad business in so many ways.
Right.
Drugs and alcohol are great. Legal drugs and alcohol are a great business, right? In a lot of ways.
Yeah. Have you read about the butterfly effect of like this is fascinating to me. So like there's a butterfly effect where like the United States has been doing a war on drugs, right? Since the 70s. And a part of that was criminalizing marijuana, right? And then so that has caused all the cartels and everybody to like go underground and do only cash based like transactions. It's all cash for illegal drugs, right?
Yep.
And so the cartel therefore has all these problems of how do we get money into
cash logistics problems.
Yeah, how do we get money into the like? How do we launder it? How do we make it all legal? All that kind of stuff. So then, because of that, and because we have this stupid war on drugs, and we go too far against marijuana, which arguably is we're headed the right direction in terms of liberalizing it, but still there's this overarching war on drugs. So they can't actually like take credit cards and that sort of thing at these dispensaries. It's okay and really expected that folks are going to be taking cash right at all these dispensaries, right? So you have this like this butterfly effect that gets there, but then it all circles back, which is there are estimates that, and I saw it was like 30 to 50% of the cash that is coming into these dispensaries is just straight up laundered money. Like basically the cartels have figured out like, oh, like there is a semi-legal business where the government is actually okay with us taking in a lot of tax money via cash. And so they just walk over and say, yes, I'd like 5 pounds of cannabis, please. Here's $3 million, and like funneling it through all these things. And then the last I saw is because the cash has gotten so out of hand in all of these dispensaries and there's no banks will take it, right? Because we have a war on drugs. Then you have a situation where like the Fed has started to help them deal with the volume of cash they have because they have hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash. Like, so it's like created like this whole like a cycle that comes back on itself because of all these individual decisions that are made to where like lots of the money coming through the dispensaries is totally just like, it's now taxed, but it's just drug money. It's just for different drugs. It's just crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's cocaine money that now looks like marijuana money.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things. So I think you probably know this, but I don't know if our listeners do. The IRS does not care how you make your money. They just care that you pay taxes on it.
Yeah, so that's like, the Al Capone thing, right?
The Al Capone thing, yeah. So like, like people like you want to, you could get in more trouble selling drugs and not reporting the taxes than you can like and not paying tax on it than you can basically like selling drugs in many.
Yeah. Well, it's a separate crime, it's a separate crime. Like that's how they nailed Al Capone for tax evasion, right? Because he was making all this money and not reporting to the IRS every year, and they couldn't actually get him on the drug charges. Like they could never nail him on that.
Yeah, but
they sure as hell could prove he made a ton of money from somewhere and didn't pay tax on it, and they put him away for years for tax evasion.
Right. So anyway, but if you like what you're saying, like you fill out your tax form and you're like, I made this money from selling drugs. Like I sold weapons to the Russians. Like you say that on your tax return, like nothing will happen to you. Like
that's not guaranteed that nothing will happen to you.
Well, I mean, from a tax, the IRS will not look at it. I mean,
the IRS will take your money. There's no guarantee they don't refer you to the FBI. But.
Yeah. Well, there's no guarantee they actually ever look at your tax return. I mean,
also
you see how the IRS is running. So anyway, so I think there's one more point I want to make about this. And my buddy who I talked about bought a combo dispensary and all this kind of stuff in New Mexico. And I have talked with him about the experience of going through it. This industry has attracted a bunch of people who are just dirtbag criminals. Like they're, and when you ask yourself like, well, why would that be? Why would a bunch of dirtbag criminals go to a new legalized thing? And the reason is because it's all the people who are like breaking the law, selling pot before. And
they've already got the infrastructure, right?
Yeah, they're the ones that know how to do this. So
and that's not to say everybody in this industry is a dirtbag, just to be clear, but there are a lot of dirtbags.
It's a much higher percentage than say, other stuff. So my buddy had gone through just like different partners, different grow guys, And it is just like a nightmare. Like he would be like, yeah, I got a new set of like business partners on this, and I hired a new guy to run my thing. And then 9 months later, he's like, yeah, that guy was ripping me off. Like every single one of them. It just happened over and over again. They were lying to me. They were scumbags. Da, 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 da. So yeah, that's the other thing. You know, I guess it's maybe it's your phrase. Like you play around with hogs. You're gonna bathe in shit.
Yeah, like I mean, here's the thing. Like I am pretty confident none of my competitors are going to break my kneecaps if I out compete them. Right? You cannot be totally confident in this industry that if you have a lot of success, somebody is going to come break your kneecaps or demand protection money or whatever.
Some guy from XYZ cartel is going to show up and be like, you know what we think you need to do? You're going to be like, whatever you tell me. Like that's how.
Well, you know what's funny too? I have a friend that I went to high school with who then became a Navy SEAL, a high-level Navy SEAL, absolute badass. Did that for like 5 or 8 years. And he left and now he runs a cannabis company in California. Nice. So like if I'm not worried for him. Like when they come to break his kneecaps, he's going to break their kneecaps. I'm not worried for him, but I am not a badass like that. So I would be terrified, owning a business like this. And the more successful you get, the more terrified you should be.
Yeah. I once did a real estate deal in like 15 years ago, and we got into a dispute with the other guys. And then later on, I hear that the other guys are of ill repute and maybe connected to that kind of willing to do whatever type groups. And I was up late at night, scared about it. And I was like, oh, this isn't worth it. Like, I'm not getting involved with these guys. Rolled over and just went back to normal life. It's just much more fun.
Yep.
It's much more
That's
fun.
right. But like, I think this business is making $1.5 million a year. Supposedly it's for sale for 2x. If you can go direct, I know. And I should also say, I have known a ton of people who have made oodles of money in this industry, in the grow house industry, just oodles of money, and in the medical marijuana and recreational marijuana retail business as well. A lot of money has been made in this industry, and a lot of people will keep making money in this industry. I just don't know if I got the stomach for it.
I don't either. It's just easier ways to make money. That's my new phrase, my new catchphrase as I'm coming on 50-year-old Girdley. People just tell me stuff. I'm like, I don't know, man, that just looks really hard.
Yep.
There's lots of ideas out there. Why don't you just pursue something easier?
Yep. Agreed.
100%. All right. Anything more about this one? Otherwise, like, look, I think I agree with you 100%. There's something here. Like, you just got to go understand it. The good news is I think it's really pretty easy to understand this market. Like there's lots of people who love talking about the cannabis business. These are the type of people who nerd out about getting high and nerd out about marijuana. And like you go spend some time there, you talk to the seller, I bet you'd learn a million things about how this all works pretty quickly. And there's worse places to go in April, to 2023 than Oklahoma. Like it's pretty nice there actually. Have you been to Oklahoma?
I have not. I heard Tulsa is like freaking awesome.
Yeah, it's got a lot going on for it. And there's actually a really good book about how Oklahoma tied together. I would highly recommend it. And it's basically this guy takes the and I'll go through my Amazon here to find it. But he basically takes the saga of the kind of the last great year that the Oklahoma City Thunder, the basketball team, had, and ties that into the original founding of the state of Oklahoma and therefore Oklahoma City, and like how it all comes together and how you can see how Oklahoma, the state, like how it all came together, the early racism, all that kind of stuff, how that all ties back into and reverberates in what's going on today in Oklahoma's in that basketball season, which is really fascinating.
Wow, cool. The last thing I'll say about people in the marijuana industry that I just find hilarious is there are so many people in the marijuana industry that you meet them and you're like, this guy does not have 2 brain cells to rub together, right? And, either they've all been killed by the marijuana or he never did in the first place. And then you ask him a question about marijuana. And he's like, well, the endocannabinoid receptors in your brain, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, knows everything, every detail. It's like a freaking PhD. And it's like, oh, this really tells me a lot about, like motivation and passion and, all this stuff. Like there are people that are so freaking deep on marijuana, but like can't read practically. It is unbelievable.
It's pretty great. It's pretty great. I found the book. It's called Boomtown. It's by a guy named Sam Anderson. And I forgot, there's also a big part of it where he goes and spends like gonzo journalism with Wayne, and I'm blanking on his last name, but the guy from the Flaming Lips. Are you familiar with the Flaming Lips? Are you a fan of that band?
I'm familiar, but I definitely don't know the guy's name.
So that dude is from Oklahoma City, and he still lives there. And like he and his wife were like the preeminent kind of artistic culture like leaders of like this underground inside of OKC, like just totally. And they've got like this whole like complex of like warehouses and stuff, and this gang of like creators, and they would go do like crazy stuff, like totally sober, like go out in the middle of the night in Oklahoma City and like redo all the street signs to the city they wanted to have it be, and like paint on the ground, like different stuff. Like it was just like, this is the coolest stuff. But he's part of the book too. They talk about how all that kind of ties together into the fascinating culture of this little town, or this minor city in Oklahoma. And it's one of the great things about America. So highly recommend it. Yeah, Boomtown by Sam Anderson. Super good book.
Cool. Love it.
Cool, man. All right. Well, we'll catch everybody next time. Do we have an ask this time, Bill?
No ask. I don't know. Follow us on Twitter. You probably hear us talk about this plenty. Follow us on Twitter. It's where we do all the bullshitting day to day. And also, if you know somebody that would like to sponsor our podcast, if you know a professional who sells to the deal industry, so be it a lawyer, an accountant, an intermediary, anything like that, we would love to talk to potential sponsors. So come sponsor. We reach tens, nearly hundreds of thousands of listeners every month. And they all care about doing acquisitions and doing deals.
Yeah.
So come sponsor us.
Yeah, we have business buyers. So people are looking to buy stuff. So with service providers, we've had folks like that sponsor, which would be good. We have actually business sellers. Like that was one of the things that really surprises me is people listen to this podcast because they want to nerd out how to think about their business. So if you want to sell something to business sellers, Cloud Bookkeeping has been with us forever and is one of our greatest sponsors. But they sell mostly to sellers, right? And people that own businesses. So that's part of the audience as well. And they've had a lot of success.
Another sponsor of ours that is absolutely freaking tonned it is Trout CPA. They have, I don't know if they still sponsor us, but they did for a while. And they did ERTC for me and Mills very successfully, very highly ethically. And I know Mills and I have referred them to tons of people. And in talking with Dan over there, he says it's just constant from the podcast that I think they've gotten very high return on sponsoring.
And they sponsored like 3 episodes. Which
is that it? They need to come back.
It's not very much. Which
they didn't even charge him for that plug either.
Which is why, like, you and I were DMing, and you're like, "Okay, how much for one episode?" I'm like, "We're not doing that. Like, sign up for 10, because we're going to provide a lot of value, not a little value." So that's what we want to do.
Yep,
so,
that's right.
Super cool. All right, well, yeah, reach out to us. We'll take your money. I mean, we'll work with you. Catch you later.
See ya.